Hey there, FakeFox here. Welcome to my Dungeon Off-Healing build for the Templar in Firesong. If you don't know what an Off-Healer is, it's a hybrid role between healer and damage dealer. Because most dungeon content doesn't require a whole lot of healing power, off-healing builds are very effective as they bring significant additional damage to the group, making clears overall quicker and potentially also safer by skipping mechanics. Off-healing is in a way a high-risk, high-reward playstyle, so it is generally more challenging. One more thing before we get started. My build from Ascending Tide is still completely viable. This build is less situational and more accessible though, but if you don't like this new approach, you can totally stick with the old one as well. So let's get started with the gear, which basically has not changed. That is something I really like about the Spell Cure and Master Architect setup. It is just universally incredibly good in 4-player content and has been for years with minimal change. Both sets are amongst the strongest offensive support sets. Spell Cure provides a constant damage buff that requires basically no attention. Master Architect is also quite easy to use, but it is a set we can and want to control for optimal burst damage, because well-timed burst is often everything in harder dungeon content. For the remaining gear slots, we have so many options right now and there is no clear best one. For this video, I decided to go with an ability-altering weapon and a monster set over a mythic and monster set combination, because I want to have Spell Cure on both bars, which is the weaker but more reliable approach. So I end up with Master Architect only on my healing staff and a Maelstrom Lightning Staff as my front bar weapon. Black Rose Daggerers or a Maelstrom two-hander are also strong options, but the absolutely amazing rework to Puncturing Strikes convinced me to go with a complete ranged build. For the monster set, I mostly switch between Magma Incarnate and Symphony of Blades depending on whether or not my group needs resource support. Using a DPS monster set or mythic can also be a good option, especially if you deal a larger amount of the group's damage. I would not recommend replacing the 5-piece sets though, unless you really just do not have them. As traits and enchantments, we want Divines with Magicka on all armor pieces. On the jewelry, we can go for both Infused or Arcane. Infused is stronger though, and I personally use 2 spell damage and 1 recovery enchantment, but that depends on your exact build. The Destruction Staff should be precise with a shock enchant, same goes for a two-hander. Should you use daggers, go with Nurhood Mainhand and Charged Offhand with Flame and Shock enchants. For the healing staff, we use Infused Berserker, aka weapon and spell damage. As the Mundus, Thief provides the best DPS and also the second best healing after Ritual, so it is the obvious choice. As buff food, I'm using Magicka and health food. For me, this is the most optimal way to get the sustain I need without sacrificing any unnecessary damage. This is completely different though if you're another race, for example, and also varies based on fight length, how much damage the group is taking, and so on. You need to experiment for yourself. I recommend always at least bringing recovery food with you just in case. But if you permanently need more recovery, it is better to change the jewelry enchantments. Depending on what enchantments or buff food you use, you might want to put a few attribute points into health, otherwise just put everything into Magicka. You should aim for anywhere between 22k to 25k health. The best potion option is Essence of Spell Power for the damage buffs. To save some gold in easier content, you can totally use Essence of Magicka as well, and I mean the looted ones, do not craft them. And try Restoration Potions can also be an option in situations where stamina is really causing big issues. For the race, I personally play Breton, and I think it is also the most optimal, but I guess the best approach is to base your choice on what other builds you play on that character. If you usually play full healer in trials and so on, go with Breton. If you regularly play DD, go with Altmer, Dunmer or Khajiit instead. Moving on to the champion points, in the green CP I recommend Steed's Blessing and the rest really doesn't matter. In the blue CP, the most optimal, when no additional penetration is needed, seems to be Wrathful Strikes, Mastered Arms, Backstabber, and Fighting Finesse. If you do need additional penetration, replace Fighting Finesse with Force of Nature. For the red CP, I generally run Celerity, Siphoning Spells, Boundless Vitality, and Fortified, but you can always swap in things like Expert Evasion, Slippery, Bracing Anchor, or Spirit Mastery if it is situationally better. Next we will go over the abilities. As I already said, this is a complete ranged build, so no more jabs. Instead, we play Blazing Spear as our spammable. It is surprisingly strong, and because it is also a dot, it is really efficient in phases where we have to heal a lot and can't really spam it. It also provides the combustion synergy, so we don't need to run orb. Then I usually run 3 dots, Unstable Wall, Ritual of Retribution, and Reflective Light. For situations where I need more healing, I swap out either Ritual of Retribution or Reflective Light for Elemental Drain, so I can replace the Siphon Spirit on my back bar with more healing. And then the last front bar skill is Radiant Oppression as an execute. On the back bar I have Combat Prayer as my burst heal and to provide Minor Berserk. As a constant healing source, I usually play Echoing Vigor. However, if stamina is an issue, Radiating Regeneration and Healing Springs are good alternatives. Then, like I said, I use Siphon Spirit for the Mana Magicka steal, but if more healing is needed, that is what I replace with a second thought. And the last 2 skills, Channel Acceleration for the Minor Force and Radiant Aura for minor recovery buffs. As ultimates, I have Dawnbreaker on the front bar for the passives, and on the back bar, I usually run Warhorn or Barrier if the extra safety is needed, or if no support ultimate is needed, just Shooting Star as a damage ultimate. Let's also go over the passives real quick. We need basically all our class passives, Healing and Destruction Staff, Light Armor, the combat relevant ones from Medium Armor, Undaunted, Fighter's Guild, Psijic, potentially Mage's Guild, and Magicka 8 from Alliance War depending on what ultimate we use, then ratio passives, medicinal use from Alchemy, and that is it. Last topic for this video is the rotation. Like I said in the intro, I try to create a more accessible build, and this really shows in the rotation, which is, at least in my opinion, pretty easy. We refresh Blockade every 10 seconds. Every second time we also recast Reflective Light and Ritual of Retribution, and every third rotation Siphon Spirit, and every 6th rotation Channel Acceleration and Radiant Aura. Vigor, or whichever heart you are running, you can either recast together with Blockade every 10 seconds or on its own 15-second timer, whatever is more convenient to you basically. But however you play exactly, the rotation essentially completely resets every minute, as 10, 15, 20, and 30 seconds are all factors of 60. Combat Prayer and Spear Shards are the 2 spammables we are using whenever we don't need to recast anything, but make sure you use both at least once every 10 seconds for their secondary effects. Further, you of course want to be weaving light attacks. If you don't know how to weave, a guide is linked in the video description. Our ultimate we generally want to save up for whenever high burst damage is needed. With Master Architect, it can make sense to save up to 500 ultimate, and it can even make sense to sit on a full ultimate for a bit in order to definitely have it ready for an important phase, rather than just wasting it on some super easy 10-second fight or whatever. And lastly, don't forget you are a healer. At least for me, that is always a downside of especially a more static rotation. I get into a flow and pay less attention to what's going on around me. But as a healer, we always need to be able to react to incoming damage, so adjust or pause the rotation when it is necessary. Healing takes priority over keeping up damage abilities, and also make sure you don't run dry or let your support and healing run out completely, even if the fight is super easy or almost over anyway. Mistakes can always happen, and if you're not prepared to react, that is usually where off-healing builds fail. And with that, we are done. I hope you will have fun and success with the build. You can find a written summary in the description. If you have any further questions, feel free to ask me anything in the comment section. I also highly appreciate it if you like my videos or subscribe to my channel. These interactions tremendously help my videos reach a wider audience. Anyways, thanks for watching and bye.